cloud, and then I'm gonna hide myself, but I'll do a quick intro. I don't think you need an introduction, Austin. I think we all know who Austin Griffin is, but
Thank you.
we're super grateful for that you're making the time. I think if you don't know who Austin Griffin is, he really has helped onboard more people probably to Ethereum than anybody else through the different tools and platforms you've created. And we're grateful that you made the time. I got to watch the first session in the DevRel Uni cohort, and then we got to spend to meet each other, and I've just been blown away by the amount of content that he puts together. Is pretty incredible. But also I learned so much about how you manage GitHub and how you really use every channel to engage and onboard people. And so again, very grateful for all you do. I probably didn't do a good job of introducing you, but I think that the main point is that we're very grateful that you're here, grateful for what you do with the Ethereum Foundation, and again, all the onboarding tools that you've created. And with that, I am going to let you take it away. I'm going to take off my camera and my microphone, but you said you want this to be open. Oh, and another thing, we are recording this. We'll put it on YouTube, and we're going to add subtitles in Spanish. But if you guys have any questions in Spanish, we're happy to translate as well.
Yeah, and I'll watch the chat. So I think we're getting started. Here we go. Some of this. Fire it up, fire it up. It would be great if y'all ask questions or ask questions out loud or into the chat. Very open for that. It's easier to get some questions to understand like even what I should be talking about. I could totally dive in and like build some smart contracts, but that might be too nerdy. I think maybe I'll just start by kind of scratching the surface of available resources and see if any questions pop up and see kind of the level of the question, and maybe I can judge like where we should go from there. So please give me some feedback here with some questions, or I'll just be kind of mansplaining into a black hole. So please give feedback. Let me share my screen. Oh, host is disabled. I think maybe Monica, you might need to make me the host or make it so I can share. And then I can. The good time for any questions. If anybody has any like burning first questions about Ethereum or how to build on Ethereum or anything like that. Oh, I can share my screen now. She's got it.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Okay. You guys very open to questions, but I'm Austin Griffith. I founded the Build Guild, which is a DAO, a Wyoming DAO LLC, actually. It's a legal entity formed in Wyoming around a DAO. And we receive funding from the ecosystem and the EF primarily. And we build a bunch of things, and we also distribute funding for grants. And we do a lot of just like fun and educational stuff around Ethereum, teaching people how to get started building on Ethereum. And we do this with our curriculum called Speedrun Ethereum. So if you haven't gone through Speedrun Ethereum yet and you're a developer, or you know technical folks that are thinking about getting into Ethereum, tell them to go to Speedrun Ethereum, speedrunethereum.com. That takes you through a lot of different builds and teaches you these aha moments about the kinds of things that you would be building on Ethereum and the kinds of things that need this, special blockchain, this new type of computer to run on. And this will eventually lead you to even join the Build Guild, kind of not the company itself, but the organization as a whole, where we have lots of builders that join us in their journey through learning how to build on Ethereum. And all of that starts with Speedrun Ethereum. So definitely, this is almost a commercial. Go Speedrun Ethereum. If you haven't yet, you should definitely do that. There's also a Web 2 to Web 3 curriculum. Let me even paste that in. Really fun thing here on, I think there's maybe even a chat. Oh, nope, Spanish speakers. Oh, wait, there is a question. Let me paste this in first. So here is my Web 2 to our Web 2 to Web 3 curriculum. This is made by the Build Guild. It was me and Eda and Carlos that did this. Carlos did like the highly technical stuff, like diving into the EVM and learning how to script. And Etta and I did the less technical stuff of just like getting a wallet, making transactions. What is gas? What are NFTs? Just kind of the download for a technical person. So I would say some combination of that, either Web 2 to Web 3 curriculum or Speedrun Ethereum, which let me paste that back in here. Speedrun Ethereum, or even this old one, eth.build is another like resource. This is just a fun one where you could just go watch some videos. You don't have to like, submit code or interact with anything. And of course, the number one resource, but probably not the /en part, you might want ES, but there is ethereum.org. Always a great place to come learn about Ethereum. And they've made a recent change that's more about like getting people to use Ethereum rather than like getting people to build on top of Ethereum. The building on top part, I think, comes a little later after you understand it. But if you go to the builder's home and you look closely, Speedrun Ethereum is right there on ethereum.org too, which is so cool. And we're so lucky to be able to get that kind of traffic. And by the way, we're not VC captured at all, right? The Build Guild is an organization that does not take any VC funding, and we are a credibly neutral organization in the space, thinking about how we onboard the most devs we can and bring the most builders into the space and have the right tools and education ready for them. Okay, I've got some questions here. What is the number one thing you would recommend for someone participating in their first hackathon and building on EVM? I think the number one thing I would recommend for getting started with a hackathon is actually Scaffold ETH, and I'll show that off today. Here's scaffoldeth.io, but I'll show you exactly how I would go about starting a hackathon project and building it a little bit. We'll do a little bit of that in a little bit, and I'll build some stuff. Next question is your curriculum mostly for developers or also general resources? So I would say that Speedrun Ethereum is definitely for developers. You're going to have to write some code almost immediately. But the Web 2 to Web 3 stuff is sort of softer. We start with wallets and we use the wallet more often. And, by week 2 and week 3, you will get into developer content. And when we were making it, we were thinking of developers, but I don't think it's like fully developer oriented until like the second or third week for that Web 2 to Web 3. So, and also like ethereum.org and eth.build, other things that I've included in the chat are also really good resources for that. Ideas. So ideas are the hardest part. Here is if you go to buildguild.com and you scroll all the way down, I have this tech tree hiding down here at the bottom. Let me also paste that in. It's this Miro board of all these ideas of things that you should use or you should build on, or you should make sure that you've built, starting with Speedrun Ethereum, of course, but then it gets into, you should write your own CLI. So write your own scripting, make a token wallet, make a token wrapper, make a token multi-sender. And then it gets way deeper into things like running your node and building an indexer.
Алло,
Yep.
у
Is
вас
there a
кто
question there?
кричит?
Uh-oh.
You should mute. Hold on. Let
Как
me
воно проіндукували, я носив?
I think there was
Да,
maybe,
добро.
oh, oh, oh. There we go. Okay. Sorry, folks that got silenced. Go. Feel free to unmute and ask questions. I'm here for that, and I'm also watching the chat very closely if you want to type something in. But ideas for the hackathon are very hard. If you think about things that are uniquely Ethereum or things that you could only build on Ethereum, the idea space really starts to get really small. And we talk about things like Poly Market and prediction markets. One of my favorite ones is Tomorrow News from Small Brain. You predict the New York Times headline, and it's really nice because you get this nice prediction level or prediction market that comes out of that, right? So I think prediction markets are definitely really hot right now. But thinking of how prediction markets were hot like 4 years ago, and then they kind of went away, and then they kind of came back. TCRs, a token curated registry. Bonding curves. There's a lot of really cool things that were popular back when we couldn't build anything on Ethereum because it was so expensive, and not a lot of people were using it. And now we have like L2s and it's a lot cheaper and we have a lot more people using it. So the idea space definitely opens up, and you no longer, I feel like, have to build things that are uniquely Ethereum. You just need to build things that like need a blockchain in some way. This is uh, an example of something that is uniquely blockchain would be flash loans. If you haven't studied flash loans, you should definitely look at flash loans, just because they're an interesting concept and something that you can really only get from Ethereum. Which leads me to something that we'll use later. But if you haven't looked at Solidity by example yet, I'm going to paste that in also. Solidity by example has all of these wonderful first concepts, and you should go through each one of these with Scaffold ETH, and I'll show you that in a little bit when we talk about getting started at the hackathon. But if you get deeper into here, there's a lot of interesting things that go, far more complex, like building an upgradable proxy or building a Dutch auction or making a Merkle airdrop. That one's like right in the speed run even. But there's lots and lots of hacks if you're trying to look at like how to make your smart contract secure. Lots of deeper EVM stuff. There's a whole DeFi section here, so you can really get into that and like write some stuff on top of DeFi. We'll get back to Solidity by example when we start building something with Scaffold ETH. But let me check in here and see. Yes, you can keep access to that board. That board, I think you're talking about the Miro board. The Miro board is always public. It's right here down at the bottom. If you go to biddlegiddle.com, let me bring that back. Buildguild.com, and then down here at the bottom there's this tech tree, and we're even building this into like an interactive game, but for now it's like this wild fever dream of mine. If you know this meme of Charlie right here, this is me building the ETH dev tech tree. It kind of starts with like you learn your first things about getting a wallet and scripting and smart contracts, and maybe you see something from Patrick and you dink around with some of his tutorials. But I think it all usually, hopefully, leads you to building a few things. And I think the best way to get started building a few things is with Speedrun Ethereum, and it's here. And then once you've built a few things, then the tree really opens up, and there's a ton of different things from zero knowledge to gaming and randomness to public goods funding mechanisms to social to identity, civil resistance, decentralized science. At a lower level, when you're building these things, you're thinking of timing and incentives. I think it's a really good conversation to have with a new builder when we talk about a cron job. If you're a technical person, you know that a cron job is this kind of code that runs like once a night. It runs like periodically. Maybe you need to clear out logs or you need to compound interest or something like that. To do that in the Web2 world, you just set up a machine and you tell it how often you want it to run. But the Web3 world is harder than that. It requires more coordination and credible neutrality. So what you have to do is you have to build a smart contract with the right rules in it that says, you can only access or you can only run this function on this smart contract once. And when you run the function, it does whatever you need to do, compound interest or whatever. But along with writing those rules correctly, you have to provide the correct incentives. So whoever runs the job needs to get paid for it and needs to get paid way more than even the gas costs. So there's like this nice incentive for someone to always run this thing. And that's the kind of thing that you need to build on chain. And that's the kind of mentality you need to have when you're building on chain, that like, it's not just getting the computer to do what you want. You have to set up the computer code correctly and then get like humans to do what you want. So you need to create incentives around each protocol or mechanism that you build. Tokenization of things, that went wild and then not wild. NFTs, almost a bad word these days to say NFTs, but hopefully maybe it'll come back a little bit in the form of like passports or something. Infrastructure is huge. You need to kind of build your own, you have to run your own node. If you see, I have one running right here. This is a nice Reth full node. It's actually using the Build Guild client. I might as well shill that while we're here. a one-line command to run your own Ethereum node. You just copy paste this into the terminal, and then this thing comes up, and you've got Ref and you've got Lighthouse. You're running a full node that is a diverse node pair, right? It's not the leading node pair, but a different one. So lots of fun stuff there in infra and UX. But again, that tech tree is available here, and here's the shortened version and kind of some good ejection points of like more things to do, like going and participating in a code arena audit or something like that. That's farther down the line. And you can always get to this tech tree just going to buildguild.com and scrolling down to the bottom here. Okay, so we've got all the resources out of the way. We've got some good initial questions out of the way. I think the best next step for me would to be to show how to get started at the hackathon, to build like just one little small thing just to show how to get going. So I'm going to do that with scaffoldeth.io. This is Scaffold ETH is an opinionated stack that gets you to shipping something as fast as you can. It takes care of the wallet and all this other stuff about orchestration, and it links your smart contracts into your front end automatically. So it makes a lot of decisions for you. So it's a great like hackathon stack. This is a great place to get started. Eventually you might start with your own fresh, maybe Next.js and Foundry combination and then add things to it. Yep. Oh, someone asked a question, Melissa? Nope. Melissa muted. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, Melissa. So we're going to go build someone with Scaffold ETH. Feel free to unmute and ask questions if you want. I'm going to go through this kind of slow, but probably not slow enough for you to keep up. So you can always just go to Scaffold ETH and watch this. Hearts, Melissa. Okay, here we go. You can either clone the repo or you can npx create ETH. I'm going to do this one because it's kind of our new kind of choose your own adventure way to do things. And let's just let this roll. Okay, what are we going to call our project? Some hack, right? Some hackathon project. This is really important. You can choose between Hard Hat or Foundry. This is a really nice choice that we give people. We're heading toward using Foundry by default. But the Hard Hat guys, they changed the space by replacing Truffle. They made an awesome tool. They brought us console log, and now they're rewriting everything in Rust to keep up with Foundry. So I think that Hard Hat is going to remain relevant. But Foundry is pushing the boundaries of a lot of things, and it's a great tool, and it allows you to test your smart contracts with Solidity instead of with JavaScript. But I build a lot of apps, so I'm writing a lot of JavaScript, so it doesn't really matter to me. And I do, a lot less testing. I don't build like this advanced, DeFi protocol that needs 50 different smart contracts and tests for each one. A lot of what I build is like one-off little hackathon builds. So that's what we're going to do today too. We'll just make a simple build. I've chosen to use Hard Hat in this build. We're going to use Scaffold ETH. You can go to scaffoldeth.io to pull down this tooling. And right now I'm doing an npx create ETH. And we have this whole extension system, by the way. If you go to extensions.buildguild, we have this whole hackathon. There's all these submissions. So these are extensions on top of Scaffold ETH. So the way you do it is you run this npx create ETH, but you do like a -e, and you bring in some extension, like Tonto DeFi made a dynamic extension. So if you wanted to use dynamic instead of the wallet that comes with Scaffold ETH, you can use an extension, and check out extensions.buildguild for that. But we're ready to go. We're just going to use vanilla Scaffold ETH. And I am going to follow the directions here. Once you've got it installed, it has you change directory into there. And then it'll have you run a couple commands. I'm going to bring up some other terminals here. So I'm going to use yarn chain. And what yarn chain does is run our local blockchain. So now we have a local blockchain running. And then I can deploy there's like a temporary smart contract or like a placeholder smart contract called your contract. And we're going to deploy that to our chain. And then lastly, we're going to run yarn start, which will fire up a front end for us, which is really nice. So now we have a front end that's going to spin up here. And we'll have, there we go, there's Scaffold ETH. So this is what Scaffold ETH looks like out of the box. let's go ahead and open up our code editor. I'm going to use Cursor because I like to do some AI stuff now and then, but you can use VS Code or whatever you want to use. And here is what the code looks like. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit here. Okay, so we're going to have packages. You've got Hard Hat, which is going to be either Hard Hat or Foundry, depending on which one you choose. Ooh, a little light there. That's nice. And then there's Next.js for your front end, okay? So in here, in contracts, this is where we'll probably do most of our work today. Packages, Hard Hat, contracts, right? So here is our basic smart contract. If you dig in and look at it for a little bit, you realize it's kind of like a greeter contract that stores some greeting, and then someone can call set greeting and it sets the greeting. So let's go play with that and see. So a lot of times you have like the smart contract and you spend a ton of time on your smart contract. The thing that Scaffold ETH does is give you an automatic front end on top of your smart contract. So it lets you iterate in a little bit different way than just like being buried in here in this smart contract. And let me show you that. There's this debug contracts tab. And if you hit this, it's going to take you to this nice page that is basically an automatic front end for your smart contract. So let me just show that real quick. If we come up with, actually there's a total counter right here, right? I don't even know. Let's make our own counter real quick. I always like to make a quick counter. So I'm just going to say public counter equals 42. And then I'll make a function that like increments the counter and a function that decrements the counter. And that's it, right? We just wrote some Solidity code where we're going to store some counter. And then I wrote some functions to increment and decrement that counter. And then I deployed them, and watch what our front end looks like now. Our front end is going to have that count. Uh-oh, it didn't go. Yarn deploy. I didn't do the yarn deploy. There we go. There it deployed our contract. And now look, we have a counter and the value is 42. And we have a decrement function and an increment function. So if I try to call this and try to increment, it's going to tell me, hey, you don't have any gas yet. Oh yeah, okay. So you got to go up to this faucet and grab some money from the faucet. And this is just our local blockchain. So this is kind of free ETH that we're using here. But I have, $2,000, and now I can call increment, and it's going to hopefully increment our counter to 43, 44, 45, 46. And notice how I'm just like clicking buttons here and making transactions. Normally, when you are using a dApp, you're probably using some wallet like MetaMask. Here, I'm not doing that. I'm using what's called a burner wallet, which is basically a private key and local storage. Not good for production, but really good for debugging and tinkering. And this comes out of the box with Scaffold ETH. We just give you a burner wallet and you hit this little button and now you have money in your burner wallet. And now you can go over here and hit all these buttons all you want and make transactions on your smart contract and see the values of it without getting all those annoying MetaMask pop-ups and network changes and chain ID stuff, which you need. And you'll have that in production, but here locally while we're tinkering around, we're just going to use burner wallets, and they're very nice. Let me really lean into burner wallets for a second here. Let's say we have this function increment, and we only want this person to be able to do it. The way you would do that is you would write a require statement in your Solidity. So require means this has to be true, and if it's not true, you revert and you roll back everything. So say you have a function that gives $5 to Alice, takes $5 from Bob, and then requires some other thing, and that some other thing isn't true. It needs to give the money back to Bob, give the money back to Alice, roll back all those things, and it has to happen atomically. Either everything happens or nothing happens, okay? So what we could do is require that the message.sender, which is the person who's calling this function, we're going to say equals, and I'm just going to paste in my address. Look at that. I think maybe that's not the right way to do it. Let's see if this works. And then we're going to say something like not the owner. Not the owner. Okay, I think I don't put quotes around my address. I think I just paste it in like that. Yep. Okay. And then we make sure that the owner is us, and we need a semicolon there, and it looks good. Okay, so we've changed our increment function, so only this dude can call it, and if anybody else calls it, it's going to revert. So now how would we test that, right? Normally you would probably write like a whole suite of tests that need to run. But right now we're just tinkering. I don't know if this is how I want it to work. I'm trying things out and deciding if this is what I want. So new contract is deployed. Hopefully we can decrement and increment from this guy. Everything's working perfectly. But what if I come in as a new, okay, we're going to really lean into the burner wallets and I'm going to bring in a new wallet. So I'm going to open up an incognito and I'm going to go to this same location. But what you'll notice is I get a different address. I get a different burner wallet. See how this guy's kind of like green and this one's kind of pink? This is a different address. And if this address grabs some money from the faucet and tries to increment, so decrement should work. We didn't put that require statement. So you should be able to, yep, it's 42. So that works. But this should fail. This should fail and it should say not the owner or something like that. And it's so nice that we could just get in here and poke at it by just clicking the button and seeing what happens. And sure enough, we click the button and it says not the owner. So that's how we can quickly, intuitively kind of test to see how this is working. And that's kind of the power of Scaffold ETH. When you're going to a hackathon, you're trying things out, you're still learning, you need this like iteration loop where you can make some small changes and try things out and not have to write like an extensive test suite and be able to kind of get to where you want to be and what you want to build pretty quickly. So that is like a quick kind of crash course into how you tinker with Solidity. And just to lean into that a little bit more, I want to bring Solidity by example back up and say, if you take Scaffold ETH and you bring it up just like I have it here, and then you go to Solidity by example and you just go down this list, go to the hello world, go to the first app, look at primitives and data types, variables, constants, immutables, reading and writing, ether versus whey, gas versus gas price, all of these things, go through and tinker with them. Basically, look at the example and say, okay, I see what's going on here. They're creating a mapping from an address to uint 256, and they're calling it my map. And they're letting you do a getter and a setter and remove. But basically, this mapping is mapping, for any given address, there's a number. And so this looks actually kind of like a token, right? Let's paste it in and tinker around with it. I'm going to call this balances, right? So then I'm going to do that same thing where I paste it in my address. I'm going to create, let's see, not that guy's address. I want this guy's address. Okay. So I'm going to down here in my constructor now. Oh, look at it, already knows what it wants. I don't want owner. I want this dude. Okay. So I'm going to create a mapping called balances, which is just keeping track of a balance for a given user. And then when I deploy my contract, I'm going to set the balance for me to 1,000. And then I probably need some function that like sends tokens or something like that to some address and to some amount. And what's that going to do? It's going to like increment the balance of who I'm sending it to, and it's going to decrement the balance of the person I'm sending from, right? Something like, oh, no, give me that next line. Nope, not that one, that one. Okay. I don't want any of those because I know that they'll just work. And if it fails, it will underflow and throw a different error. So I don't need those require statements. Okay, send tokens. So basically I create this balance, I create the send tokens function, and now my smart contract basically operates like a token does. It's that easy. Let's deploy it and see that it works. Hopefully this works first try. Great. Okay, now we kind of have like this token thing, right? There's a balances and I can check my balance, which is now 1,000. Okay. And then let's send some tokens to Vitalik, right? Vitalik, how would you like 100 of my tokens? Now, here's a tricky thing. Remember when it said ETH versus whey here? This is a thing you need to learn because when you put a 1 in a smart contract, it actually is 1 whey. If you want to put gwei or ether, that's actually multiplying by 10 to the 18. And Scaffold ETH exposes this to the developer and forces the developer to do this really annoying thing where you don't just put in 100 and hit send because that would be 100 whey. We want to send 100 ETH. Nope, I actually want to send 100 whey because I didn't set this dude's. Let's make it ether. It's going to be clearer. So we're going to do 1,000 ether is my balance. I'm going to redeploy. So now that's 1,000 times 10 to the 18 way, or 1,000 ether. And now when we go check my balance, it's going to be a little different. There's going to be a little ether sign. There we go. Yeah, yeah. Or I could do like this, right? So it's 1,000 ether, or this really big number. And the reason for that is that the EVM needs to be simple, and it doesn't want to do floating point math with the decimal because that's more complicated. So we do this trick where we multiply everything by 10 to the 18 on the way in and divide everything by 18 on the way out. And that gives us like this fake decimal system that works with non-floating point EVM. Super nerdy. But what you need to remember is that if you want to send 100 ETH to Vitalik, you need to type 100 and then, oops, I typed 100 on the end of his address. There we go. You type 100, and then you need to hit this little button right here and multiply it by 10 to the 18. And of course, when you build your hackathon project, you won't do this. You'll take care of it for the user. But Scaffold ETH is for developers at first. And so there's this really kind of nerdy thing where you have to hit this thing to realize what you're doing. And now we hit send. Now I'll bet you my balance is 900 ether, and I bet Vitalik's balance is 100. Let's check to see if it worked. Yes, now I have 900. And if we look at Vitalik.eth, and notice how this component shows the ENS avatar and does ENS unfurl and gives you a nice blocky. This is something that Scaffold ETH does out of the box. It provides all these address components and address input components, common components that you'll use when you're building your app. And sure enough, Vitalik has 100 ETH. So we were able to make a silly token for some reason. And what we're doing here is just tinkering with Solidity. We're tinkering with Scaffold ETH. We're going to Solidity by example, and we're like learning these concepts one by one. And now let's go ahead and just clean that out and assume that we have built our smart contract and we're ready to deploy something. Let me clean everything out. Okay, so what is this smart contract without us doing anything? It's like a little greeter. I kind of like let's go back to this smart contract we had earlier that was like not balances. It was the one where we just like incremented. I kind of like the counter. This one here. Okay. Let's pretend like this is our whole app. Let's pretend like this is our hackathon project. We're going to build an on-chain counter. But that's what we did. We made a counter. We set the initial value to 42. We created an increment function that only we can call. We created a decrement function that anyone can call. And let's say that this is our hackathon project. We've tinkered around and we like the way it looks. Now we're ready to start shipping it and start shipping a front end. We could get rid of all this stuff if we wanted to. There's a lot of cruft here. I'm not even going to worry about that. Let's just deploy this and make sure it works. And then we'll get into the front end for a second. Okay, let's go back, make sure our app debugs correctly. Can we decrement? Can we increment? Does our counter change? It does. Okay, so let's pretend like we're at the hackathon and we've spent the first couple of hours at the hackathon. We got Scaffold ETH installed. We've been tinkering around with our contract. We've been using Solidity by example as an example. Maybe we built out like a Uniswap V2 wrapper that makes it really easy for you to swap to whatever coin you want. And we're ready to deploy it. Now we're ready to build the front end now, right? We don't want our users to use this debug front end. This debug front end is for nerds as they're tinkering with things, right? What other components can we add? Let me show you. If you go to the Scaffold ETH docs, so there's a docs page here. Okay, and then you go into components. Here they all are. There's an address component, a balance component, an address input, an ether input, the base level input if maybe you want to have like a URL, integer, rainbow kit, and the blocky. So those are our main components. Now, if you want to do something like a swap or a token selector, check out the extensions because we have an extension that, let's see, where can I find these extensions? I'll share them in just a moment. Where do we have them? Let's see, extensions. We have this really nice on-chain kit extension. Oh, available extensions. That's what I'm looking for. There we go. There's this really nice, so here are the available extensions. I will paste them in. On-chain kit. So we have this on-chain kit extension. So you do, just like I did to start this, MPX create ETH at latest. That spins up scaffold ETH. But then you do -E on-chain kit. And what you get out of that is a really cool setup where you can make a token selector. You can make, ooh, this is going to take me, yeah, here we go. You can make a token selector. You can make a, darn it, a swap. Yeah, here we go. Start building. So check out these components. These are like a layer up. So like the scaffold ETH components are just simple like address input, low level stuff. This is a little higher where they have an identity, a wallet, a transaction, a token, or a swap. Really cool because with this one line, so you run basically that one line right here, and then you say, I want to have a swap component, and then I want to have a token selector. And like in 40 minutes, you can deploy an app where people can go to your app, select what token they want, and then swap between that token and ETH on base or something like that. So with these extensions, it even like powers up your ability to build quickly, even faster building. Okay, so let's pretend we've built our awesome smart contract. We've dinked around with it and it works the way we want it to. Now it's time to build a little front end. So your front end will be over here on this home page. And let's seal up our hard hat for now and let's move into our next JS. And we'll go to app and we'll go to page. And I'm just going to clean out a bunch of this code just to show that we can kind of take that out. It should kind of get rid of some stuff. There we go. We got rid of some stuff. I still want to kind of get rid of that stuff too. Let's clean this up and hit save. How's that look? Oh, I'm getting better. We're getting more things taken out. There we go. Okay, we're getting very close. Okay, and then instead of saying welcome to what are we calling this? Like example hack, some hack. Welcome to some hack. Yep, this is a hack. All right, and then maybe we'll put something here that's like text, and we'll say something like simple counter example or something like that, right? So we're going to make a counter, okay? So now we want to read from our contract. And the best way to do that, go check out the docs. How do I read from my contract, right? Interacting with your smart contracts. Oh, there's a use scaffold read. This is really handy. So let me grab this and I'll just paste this hook in here and it'll say something like, hey, this isn't installed. You'll need to install it from scaffold ETH. Looks like we've got some stuff that doesn't need to be there anymore after cleaning that other stuff out. Okay, now watch this. So it's saying use scaffold read, and oh, whoops, this needs to be inside of our component. It needs to be right here with the rest of our hooks, right? Because we're using this use account hook from WagMe already, right there. But we have this use scaffold read contract, and it's going to go to our contract. It knows about our contract. And now watch this. If I delete this and I open up the quotes, it's actually going to go look at our smart contract and it's going to say, hey, what are the variables that you might be reading from your smart contract? It has it all here in the front end and it lets me choose, I think counter is what I made. And then we won't need any arguments this time. And then some data will come back and we rename it to counter. So now we have this little piece of code right here is now going to read the counter from our smart contract and keep it in the state of our app. And we can even maybe display it here. If I just create like a quick div and I say something like counter, all caps. Yeah, there we go. There we go. It didn't let me go all caps. It cleaned it up. Thank you for cleaning up. That was nice. And so what do we see? Uh-oh, looks like our counter is not working. Maybe we need to do something like .toString or something. Let's try that. There we go, counter 43, it's working. We're displaying our counter in the front end. All right, so we're reading from our smart contract. Now I wanna have a couple buttons that lets me increment, right? So what I would do is I would go to use scaffold contract write, and I would copy paste this stuff in here. But let's get even nerdier. Let's try something cool. Let's try to use some AI. Okay, so we're going to say this is how you write to a contract in scaffold ETH. And then I'm going to paste that in, right. And then I'm going to say, please create 2 buttons, one that increments and one that decrements on the contract. And maybe we need to add the contract here just so they can see it. Okay. All right, AI. We're counting on you, AI. Let's see what you can do. All right. Hopefully it just builds a front end for us, right? That's what we're looking for, a little magic here. Let's see what happens. So hopefully I'm not even going to look at the code. I'm going to just blindly accept this and hit save. Looks like it's not happy with my use contract right. Oh, wow. I even pasted in how to do its use right contract. And I think it's, no, it needs to be that, right? And hopefully they figure that out. And then here's the button. Yeah, let's see. I think it did a better job there. For some reason, it was like using the old version of Scaffold ETH, like it's dead set on that, even though I showed it the exact right example of how to do it. But hey, it's, it's getting better. And the AI is hopefully going to write most of this, but it looks like it has slightly failed us. Let's see. Now it has a right contract. Let's see. Do we have buttons now? Let's go see what our front end looks like. Hey, look at that. We have maybe a front end. What happens if I hit increment? Nope. Okay, so something is not right. Yes. Okay, so it's not calling the right function. Okay, and then, so we need to tell the AI did terrible, to be honest. And that's not its fault totally. I think that the scaffold ETH docs have changed, and it's like programmed on old docs, so it thinks that this is the other way around. So we see to say, no, the buttons to work like this. And then we paste in those buttons, and hopefully it like, I apologize. Yeah, I always feel bad when the AI apologizes to me. Okay, here we go. Apply, accept. Let's see what this looks like now. Hopefully it will call the increment function and the decrement function. I think we may be set. I think maybe that fixed us. Let's try it. Increment. Ooh, it's working. What's the counter going to do? Oh yeah, it's working. And decrement, right? We're able to go back down. Okay, it's working. So we kind of used AI to write our front end a little bit. I did a little bit of it manually, but then showed how you could do it automatically. The AI is definitely confused about scaffold ETH, and you'll need to spend some time setting it straight with the docs. It's just not quite there yet, or it's trained on something else. And by the way, I'm using Cursor instead of Visual Studio Code. I'm using Cursor because it does this AI stuff in line. But now our app is ready to go. We've tinkered with our smart contract, and we've built a little counter, and we made sure it worked on the debug tab. We switched over to the home page, and we wrote some React manually. And then I showed how you can even use the smart contract to write the React. You can use the smart contract to write the Solidity even if you want. You just need to be very careful with that. If you're deploying something that's going to have real money in it and you're YOLOing code that is written by ChatGPT, you need to be very careful about that. But we were able to write a full app, basically. This is a full Web3 app. We can increment and decrement. Of course, you would want to do something much more interesting. But now how do we deploy this thing? What are the steps of taking this thing live so we can show it to the judges at the end of the hackathon, even provide them with like a URL? You could go to like dumbcounter.com and it like lets you count, like connect your wallet and increment and decrement. Actually, it won't let you increment, right? Only I can increment for some reason, but that's how we built it. How do we deploy this thing? So our final steps here, as we've built out our app and we've tinkered with it and we've built it out and got it working how we want. Yes, there's a recording. There's definitely going to be a recording, and I think they're going to Spanish dub it also. So you could look for that soon. But let's finish this out. So to deploy this thing live, I am going to first clean up our smart contract a little bit. There's like this console log code that makes it really good for debugging. but I don't want that deployed on chain because it just carries with it a lot of extra code that we don't need. So I'm just going to deploy this one more time locally and make sure it looks good without that stuff, make sure it does what it needs to do. And it looks like it's going to, it's a little slow to update, but it is. And then we're going to deploy this thing. We're going to put this thing out on a live network. So let's do that. So to deploy, right now, when I do a Yarn deploy, it's basically just deploying it over to this local blockchain of ours, right? If you see this deploy, you'll see it go by here and I spend some gas, right? Each time I do a deploy, something happens on that chain. It's not even really deploying unless I do a reset. And then we'll really see it deploy over there. There we go, 500K of gas used to deploy that contract. So it's all deploying locally to our local chain, but what we want to do is put it on a public production chain. Now you could put it on Sepolia or something, but gas is crazy there. I'm just going to spend real money to do this because it doesn't really cost that much to deploy to an L2 these days. So to deploy to an L2, I can't just use the deployer account that we were using on our fake chain. I'm going to need to generate a deployer. So I'm just going to do yarn generate. And what that does is create, similar to our burner wallets, kind of like a little burner deployer. And then I'm going to need to send money to this address. So you could copy that address and you could send in Sepolia or whatever you plan on deploying. I'm going to use a burner wallet of mine called Punk Wallet. So if you go to punkwallet.io, it comes up there. And I happen to have like $7 on base. There we go. So I got $7 on base. So I'm just going to send in like 25 cents. I bet it's going to be less than that to deploy this app. So I'll send in 0.25 USD. Actually, I'm sending that in ETH. So what did I actually send? I don't even know what I actually sent there. I sent a small amount though of base ETH, right? So now I can do yarn deploy, but we're going to add something here. We're going to add -- network base. Okay, so here we go. We're about to put a real smart contract out on a real network that anyone can get to, and we're going to pay real money. Please work first try. Here we go. Hopefully 25 cents is enough. It's thinking about it. It's thinking about it. Let's go, baby. Deploy. Come on. There's a transaction. We've got a transaction hash. Our contract is deployed live to base. How cool is that? For less than 25 cents. It probably is less than a penny. We can go look at that in a second. But if we look at our app, it still says hard hat. Why does it still say hard hat? It still says, like our local contract on hard hat. What's going on here? Well, you need to make a change in this file called scaffold.config, and it's right here in your Next.js. Scaffold.config. You can also hit Command P and just type in scaffold, and it's going to be the first one that you find. But this is a config file, and it controls your whole app. And right now it's set to hard hat. But watch what happens when I change this to base and hit save. Our whole app is going to switch over to base. How cool is this? Okay, now it's wanting me to connect a wallet, and we'll go through the whole MetaMask dance. And it even has me switch my network to base, but check it out. Now my app is live on base. Here's the contract, here's the front end, here's the debug page, and look, it's on base now. And if I go click on this contract, it's going to take me to base scan. So all of those addresses now link to base scan instead of your local block explorer. And sure enough, here is my contract. There's the code to my contract that I need to verify. Here's the transactions on the contract. So it's working. We have a live app, but we're still accessing it on localhost, right? I can go ahead, let's make a transaction. Let's decrement. I know increment won't work, but let's make a real transaction. I'm going to pay a fraction of a cent, and I'm going to decrement our counter from 42 to 41 on chain, live. Hopefully this works. There, it's set to 41. Okay, I think I maybe needed to reload this too, like shorten that reload time. But there's our counter. Let me try decrementing one more time to see if it goes faster. Not that, I mean, like not, it needs to finish there. Now let's see how long. Oh, that was way faster. Okay, yeah, I think you want that polling interval sped up. Okay, but we're still on localhost. Last little piece we need to do is deploy our app. So you do a yarn vercel. And if you look at the docs, you can find all the options. but I do this really weird thing where I say YOLO prod. So I'm yarn Vercel YOLO prod. And what that does is skip all the type checking, all the safety stuff, and just let me deploy an app. So I'm going to say not an existing. This is like some hack is what we're calling it. It's located here. And now there, we're ready to go. So now our app is deploying. This will take like 5 minutes, but eventually what we're going to get is a live URL. And we could even point a domain at it, right? Like somestupidcounter.com. We could now point at this build and people could type in somestupidcounter.com and hit go, and they'll get the thing that you built just now, and they can get in here and connect their wallet, and they can interact with your app that you built live in 30 minutes or whatever this has been. Now it's been probably like 40 minutes of talking and building. But what this should show you is that you can grab Scaffold ETH off the shelf. You can run this command. You can go to Solidity by example to get all of the concepts. You can bring those concepts into Scaffold ETH. You can tinker with them in your smart contract. You can use this debugging page to get it right. Then when you have your smart contract working the way you want, you can switch to this and write some React and make an app and deploy your contract and deploy your app and have a winning hackathon project without having to dig through all the technical junk that it takes to make this stack work the way it does. You're able to focus on writing your smart contract and your app and making something that people will actually use. And that's the goal of Scaffold ETH. There's a lot of components here that we'll eventually rip out and make NPM installable. So if you come at this as a professional and you don't want to use our opinionated stack, you can still have some of these goodies, and we're working on that now. But for this is perfect for a hackathon stack, and that's what I wanted to show off. Just give you almost like a license to go learn. Hopefully this gives you a license to go learn. You can pull this stuff down and you can go start learning right away. It's a very permissionless ecosystem. It's very open source and open to contributors. Definitely open to questions. Come on, let's get some questions in the chat now. I've been yapping for way too long, and we built something cool, and it will take a little bit to deploy. But eventually I bet we could like follow this link and actually go play this app in a little bit. It's deploying still. Any questions out there? All these links are on buildguild.com. Ooh, On-Chain Kit is only available for Scaffold Base. So it's not even using Scaffold Base, actually. On-Chain Kit is for Scaffold ETH. So it's the On-Chain Kit is actually not available for the Scaffold Base. If you're still using Scaffold Base, I would say you should probably think about using that on-chain extension and using Scaffold ETH. So you use MPX create ETH latest -E on-chain kit, I think is what it is. Let's see if I type that in. Let's see. Let's just do it. See if it auto completes. Oh no, I don't want that. No. Any questions? Put them in the chat. Let's go. Oh man, what? Oh man, what? I don't know what that is. Oh no, I just killed the window that was making the front end. Well, I guess we won't get a front end. Sorry. Eventually we would have had one here. Let me see if I can still just run it.
And I was
Yeah,
gonna
okay,
say,
it's cute again. Yep,
I'm
go
gonna say
ahead.
something in Spanish. Si quieren poner la pregunta en español, nosotros podemos ahí traducir. Ya saben que es parte de mi trabajo. But this is great,
Por
Austin.
favor.
We're all inspired by by your energy.
Yeah, bring it.
Whatever you're having.
Yeah, not even coffee. There's water in this coffee mug. I already had my morning coffee.
That's so funny. Well, we have a lot of great builders. I don't know if anybody wants to come off mute and ask any questions. I actually have a question, not on what you first. I'm curious to learn, what was the first thing you built and why?
Ooh, cool. Yeah, so the very first thing I built was this game called Gallias. And I built it on XDAI, which is now Gnosis Chain. And why I built it was when I first got into the space, I could tell that I was not going to be the smartest guy in the room. I was quickly in a lot of rooms where I was the dumbest guy in the room. But I'm a creative guy and I'm an artistic guy. So what I did was I made this game that is an on-chain game that kind of shows how you can do movement and some interesting game-like mechanics, burner wallets, and a lot of those other things. But I like hand painted each one of these tiles, and I made this like hand painted game that kind of it kind of moves like a painting, but it's all on chain. Even the clouds, you can't see it right now because it's not running anymore, but the clouds would move and their movement is actually on chain. And so it's like this massive multiplayer game that you go to by just visiting a website and making some transactions. But it really shows off like how Ethereum is this like massive multiplayer at the heart of it. And I made this, fun little silly game with like unicorns and dragons, and it's kind of like a resource management game where you buy tiles and you collect wood and stone and you build ships, and there's a whole economy and you're swapping. But it was because I was trying to think of like, what can I do uniquely that is different than something that's ever been done, and that kind of led to this and why I built this. But then I got into the space and I kind of realized that no one really cared. Like maybe like 100 people played the game over a while, but it like did not have the users I was looking for. I started doing things that were like DevRel-ish. I made ETH.build and a lot of things that like show off how to build on Ethereum. Burner wallets and early account abstraction was called meta transactions back in the day. There, you can probably find like Google meta transactions. You can probably find some of my old content there somewhere, some old videos of me looking like a nerd. And that's where I really started having impact. I was building DevRel content, showing off things, and that's where a lot of people started like actually using my stuff. Oh, and Nifty Inc. was a fun one too. It did meta transactions basically. You could come in here. My son was doing some really cool ones last night, but you could come in here and draw something and then put it on chain without ever spending your own gas. And we used meta transactions. Oh, I've got another call, so I've got to dip. I hope that's okay. Oh, we
Yeah,
got a question.
just real quick, one question. Was the code, you have two real questions.
Yeah, okay. Was the code auto completion for VS Code part of that? Was the auto completion was Copilot. Nothing to do with Scaffold ETH. It was just Copilot doing the auto complete. And then the second question is Cursor. And I think, is it paying for Cursor? I pay for Cursor. Like Cursor is like a new piece of magic, and I would suggest using it and paying for it. and like the 3 guys that made Cursor are just going to get hella rich, but they deserve it. It's an awesome tool.
Any advice to become DevRel?
Yeah. Can you share advice becoming a DevRel? Hit record. Like go find some docs, hit record, and just build something on camera and show it off, and then provide feedback on those docs. Like get that loop going, and that's something that's really. So Cursor and Copilot. Yep, exactly. That is my recipe. Okay, sorry, I have to dip out early.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks for making space for this. I'm Austin at Ethereum or Austin Griffith on Twitter. Let me just put my Twitter in here real quick. My DMs are open. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. What is my Twitter? Just a second. Let me paste it in. Austin Griffith. There he is. That's the guy. That's me. That's the dude right here. Follow me on Twitter. Open, very, very open for questions. DMs are open. Hit me up there. Hearts, hearts, hearts. Thank you guys for having me. I gotta take off. Go build something awesome. Go use Scaffold ETH. Go use Speedrun Ethereum. Hearts, hearts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you everybody for joining. We will be sharing this recording. We'll try to make it available as quickly as possible in English, and then we'll add the one with subtitles. But I'll work with Anna. And then just real quick, for the person who asked about DevRel, I don't know who asked. Whoever asked about Lucila, send me a message. DevRel Uni is launching their their new cohort. I'll put it in the Discord, but if you guys want to apply, I'm happy to give a recommendation. I participated in the last one, so sorry for the English. Pero bueno, a todos, gracias. Thank you. Obrigada. Chao, chao. Ah, okay, Melissa. Yeah, anybody that applied, send me a note and I'm happy to provide a recommendation. Gracias. Chao, chao.